A thing that no one tells you about burning out during a PhD is that it has almost nothing to do with how hard you're working. And I know this does sound backwards, but there is a real reason for this, and once I understood it, it changed how I approached my PhD life. Let me break it down. Hi, if you're new here, my name is Aku and I'm a second year neuroscience PhD student studying in London. And today we're talking about academic burnout. In particular, why it happens during a PhD. And I'm not going to give you generic advice you can easily Google. I want to get into the actual reasons, because I think once you understand the why, the what to do becomes a lot clearer. So let's get into it. The first real reason is something called allostatic load. And this is basically the idea that your brain and body are constantly tracking every single stressor in your environment. Whether it's big or small, it's all getting added up. So let's think about what a normal PhD week looks like. You're uncertain about what experiment you need to do, whether your PhD project is even going in the right direction. You may be constantly comparing yourself to others. Every single one of these things has a biological cost. And the problem is, none of these feel like big stressors. Nothing dramatic happens most days, but your nervous system is adding them all up in the background. And at some point, the total load will just become way too much. Even if individually, nothing seems like a crisis. And this is why you can have a perfectly normal day, but you can still go home feeling very, very drained. It's not that you're being dramatic or that there's something wrong with you, your brain is just drained. No amount of time management will actually fix that if you're not reducing the load. Now, the second reason is validation drought. And this reason is something I've touched on in one of my previous videos, but essentially, it's the complete absence of external feedback during your PhD. In school, you have grades, and in a normal job, you may have constant deadlines and regular meetings about how you're doing. But in a PhD, this just stops. You're not graded, so you don't know how well you're doing. You can spend weeks or months in something that didn't work, so it might feel like you've done nothing this entire time. And your friends or family might not actually know what you're working on, so you kind of lose social validation as well. This might create exhaustion because you are working very hard, but sometimes you have absolutely nothing to show for it. And your brain, which needs a reward to stay motivated, starts running on fumes. But don't worry, this is not a personal failing. This is just how motivation works in the brain. Your dopamine system does not care how hard you're trying. It responds to outcome and feedback. And when they dry up, so does your drive. Most PhD students are doing the equivalent of running a marathon, but with no mile markers. And at some point, your brain might stop believing that the finish line is even real. Now for reason number 3, you stop being a person, and now you're just a PhD student. At some point during your PhD, the line between you and your research might blur. And when that happens, every failed experiment is no longer just a failed experiment, but it becomes a reflection of who you are as a person. Every rejection and every week where nothing actually works may start to feel personal. And I think a lot of PhD students don't realise this until they're actually deep within it. This is because it could creep in slowly. For example, you may start skipping things because there's always more work to be done. Or you feel guilty, you stop having hobbies outside of academia, and your whole social circle becomes your department. And the irony is, this is when burnout can begin to accelerate. You've removed everything that used to tell your brain that you're more than just your results. Your worth is not tied to your work. For example, my worth is not tied to whether my stem cells survived this week. It's important to remind yourself of this often. Okay, so now let's get to what actually helps. So if any of this is resonating with you, stick around. But before that, if you find this content helpful, a like and a subscribe will help me know whether I should keep making these videos. Okay, now let's continue. Okay, so solution 1. Work with your brain and not against it. The first thing that helped me was understanding what my brain was doing, not just what my schedule was doing. Because here's something they don't tell you. When you're in burnout, prefrontal cortex, the part of your brain responsible for focus, planning, and decision making, is actually impaired. But it's not simply a motivation problem. And you trying to power through is like running on a broken ankle. There is actually research on something called ultradian rhythms. Your brain naturally cycles through 90 minutes of high focus, followed by a window where it needs to recover. But in academia, the need to recover part is often forgotten. Sitting at your desk for longer is sometimes treated as the goal. So what I do is when my brain is not working, and I don't mean when I just don't feel like it, I stop fighting it and switch to something which is a bit lower effort. For example, admin, replying to some emails, needing to sort out my samples in the lab, you know, that kind of stuff. Or sometimes I even just go outside. Not as a reward, but because I need to. And remember, you're not being lazy. Your brain is just asking for what it really needs to function. And the next thing is to lower the bar of what actually counts as progress. Because you're doing a PhD, you may be conditioned to measure yourself by big outcomes. A chapter finished, an experiment worked, a paper published. But honestly, most of doing a PhD is actually not that. Most of it is small, quiet wins that may not even feel like progress at all. So this is what I started doing. At the end of every day, I write down or even think about 3 things I did today. And this can be as simple as, today I kept my organoid alive, I replied to every single email that I had to respond to, today I started troubleshooting a protocol that I've been meaning to get to, you know, that kind of things. And your nervous system actually needs to hear that. Not because it wants to trick you into being okay with being mediocre, but because it could recalibrate what doing enough really looks like. Your brain's definition of enough is extremely broken, so you need to manually reset it. And the next thing is to create distance between you and your research. Your research and you as a person can blur together. So what I do is intentionally do things that have nothing to do with my PhD. And that can be joining an exercise class, going to the gym, seeing friends, reading, things where I'm just a person and not just a researcher. I know this does sound really simple, but if your entire social circle is only PhD students and your Instagram is full of academic content and your Sunday evenings are spent planning your experiments for the next week, your nervous system may never get the signal that it is in fact safe to stop. Burnout does not mean that you're not cut out for this. It means that you've been running on empty for far too long without anyone telling you that it's okay to stop. So if you like this video and would like to see more content from me, please like and subscribe. I'll see you in the next video.